Divorce me, because I can't take care of you. I want to be free.
He started saying that as soon as I was put in a wheelchair. I didn't expect him to say that to me after spending 40 years together. I had plenty of complaints about my husband, but to be told like that after being together for over 40 years and thinking we were family is just, it's too late to regret giving me up, the wife who would have done anything for him. My name is Mindy. I'm 67 years old, and I have been buying all kinds of skincare products because I'm worried about my cracked and crusty skin. I'm 67 years old. I'd like to have soft skin again. Is it too late for me? No. My heart is still young and healthy, so I should be fine. I can say that now. But my heart used to be so full of life. That was about 3 years ago. I was in troubled relationship with my husband Greg. We have been living on our pension since we retired a few years ago. My husband, who was a high school graduate and a general manager of a major construction company, started acting like a boss at home, perhaps as a reaction to his resignation from the company. My husband and I used to be very close. His father, and my father for that matter, is also a patriarchal man. I grew up in the countryside, and it was common for my friends to have a domineering husband. Because of this, I was strangely convinced that wives were treated like this everywhere. Nowadays, people are saying, a husband who is domineering towards his wife is not a good husband. I feel that this is true though. My stubborn husband and Regina, our only daughter, have always been at odds with each other. As an adult, she is in touch with me, but she and my husband are estranged. Even my daughter rejects him. I must be the only one who can get along with my husband. If it's his domineering nature, I could accept it because I'm used to it. After retirement, my husband started to nag me about how I didn't clean the house well enough, or how inefficiently I did the housework, and I honestly thought it was a nuisance. When I asked him if he wanted to have lunch, he would say,
"Just something simple."
And when I served him a simple meal, he would get angry at me for cutting corners. When I was cleaning the kitchen, he would say that the drains were not clean enough. I was just about to do it. I could see that my husband would surely block me if I said that. When I argue with him, he thinks he can just cut me off. He has a temper, and it happens unnecessarily. If that's all there is to it, I should just let it go. But lately, my husband has been losing control of his anger due to his age, and he sometimes throws a cup at me. So I have been refraining from talking back as much as possible. At work, he would get angry at his subordinate with a smug look on his face, and I guess that's where he used to release some of his stress. That's gone. I feel like everything is pointed at me now. One day, when the topic of divorce came up on TV, it hit me so hard that I couldn't think of it as someone else's problem. I was shopping when I collided with a bicycle and fell down, breaking my knee and requiring an operation. My husband, who was standing next to me at the time of the accident, said to me while I was in pain,
"You are exaggerating."
He looked at me coldly and quickly went home. When a passerby kindly arranged for an ambulance and I was admitted to the hospital, my husband threw the least amount of luggage and documents to the receptionist and didn't even accompany me to the surgery. And the day after the surgery,
"What are you going to do about the house?"
When my husband finally came to visit me and asked me that, I couldn't help but think, huh? What? I asked back, what was this crazy husband talking about?
"I'm talking about the house. I had no choice and did it. But what are you going to do from now?"
My leg feels like it's going to hurt. Can you just do it yourself until I can feel my feet again? I was frustrated by the stress of being in a hospital, and I told my husband what I really thought. Naturally, my husband was furious. He started to make a big fuss in the hospital room with his own thinking that his wife was lazy and not prepared enough to take care of the house. The nurses immediately rushed to the room and picked up my husband. But needless to say, the other patient looked at him scornfully. It's hard to have a husband with a temper. I have one too. My friends were living in other places, so I had no one to talk to about my relationship with my husband. The hospitalization was a disaster, but it was great to have someone to talk to about family problems and learn about other families. It also allowed me to be objective about what a crazy person my husband really was. I was in the hospital for about 3 months and did rehabilitation every day, but I didn't recover as well as I would have liked, so I became wheelchair bound. Thanks to the fact that I spent a lot of time in the hospital talking about my husband's complaints with others, I felt mentally refreshed, as if a burden had been lifted off my shoulders compared to before I was hospitalized. My husband's visits to the hospital were restricted due to the coronavirus, and I have not seen him at all since he made a fuss in the hospital room. We've only exchanged messages about where the fabric softener was, at the very least. It seems that he was able to live a decent life on his own. I'm sure my husband is not all that bad. After all, we've been together for over 40 years. I should not give up on him just because he is getting older and angrier. But I should be a forgiving wife who can let bygones be bygones. I was trying to change my mind, but my husband didn't come to pick me up, even though I had told him about the day I was going to be released. It was impossible for me to go home alone by train and bus, as I was not familiar with using a wheelchair. I had no choice but to call a taxi by myself, and as soon as I unlocked the front door, my husband came.
Why did you come home?
He yelled at me. Why did I? I told you, I'm leaving the hospital today. Why didn't you come get me? I was shocked.
How can you say that after making me do the housework for months? Shouldn't you apologize?
Huh? What are you talking about? I was in the hospital, you know. We were both getting old. You could at least support me at a time like this.
No!
I was stunned by my husband's unhesitating refusal.
They told me at the hospital, you know. You are going to be in a wheelchair. I don't want to take care of someone who is going to be in a wheelchair. Divorce me because I can't take care of you. I want to be free. Even though I'm alone, I know I can do the housework and clean. I will never be as good as you after decades of housework. But I'd rather live on my own than live with the burden of having to take care of an old woman with a bad leg.
I was stunned that he thought that way when I heard his complaints one after another. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I had believed that my husband's personality was just distorted after retirement, but that he was still the same, and that after 40 years together, we still had some sort of affection for each other. It is true that the words divorce at a ripe old age had been floating around in my mind, but I thought I would never choose that path simply because I had a longing to be a free woman. We've had our fights, but we've always managed to get along, and I assumed that we had a good track record and would continue to do so. Are you sure? You will regret it. When I asked my husband, he said,
I would never do that.
Okay. Let's get a divorce. I will be out of here by the end of the day. Since you're the one who asked, can you help me pack my bags?
It's not that big of a deal. You are leaving anyway.
I almost cried a little when I saw my husband smiling so contentedly, but I held it in. Oh, how easy my marriage was. It's a bitter story to think that it will end with a short exchange of divorce me, and I understand. Then my husband and I divorced as we had declared, and I spent my days working hard in rehabilitation. Rehab was tougher than I had imagined, but my rehab teacher was kind, and I made many friends around the same age, so I was able to continue to have fun. Then one day, I received a call on my cell phone from my husband. It had been a few months since my divorce, but my belongings were still in the house. I asked him what was left, thinking that I could have him throw some of it away, but he was adamant about not telling me. He said he didn't want to mail it because the post office was too far away. I was afraid to go to his house because I thought it would be too much trouble. So I set a meeting place at a busy park near his house. On the day of the meeting, my husband was waiting for me at the park in his wheelchair. His hair sticky and his clothes shabby. What happened? He didn't answer my question, and he looked at me again.
Why aren't you in a wheelchair?
He asked. It was just a broken bone. It was a slow recovery, and now, as you can see, I can walk around with a cane. Didn't they explain that to you at the hospital when I came in?
No,
You didn't hear about my surgery because you weren't interested, right?
That's right.
Huh, you're the worst. So, you look... What's wrong with you?
I'm asking you out of shame. Please remarry me.
For the second time in my life, my husband proposed to me. Why are you talking about this? I asked him, and he began to tell me the story of his life. Apparently, the reason he was in a wheelchair was because he had fallen off a riverbank on his bicycle and damaged his knees. I couldn't help but say, I told you so. My husband enjoys cycling on his cross bike, but he has a habit of going too fast. He fell and broke his ribs a few times when he was younger. Thank goodness he didn't cause any problems for others. I often advised him to refrain from driving too fast, saying, I know it's your hobby, but it's dangerous. But of course, my husband would not listen to me. And as a result, he ended up in a wheelchair, which I can only say was his own fault.
The hospital suggested that I use a home care service, but I don't want a complete stranger taking care of me.
You will just have to live with that.
I can't. I want to remarry you. As you can see, I can't take a bath or wash my clothes. I can't stand it. Help me.
You came here without a bath? That's a selfish thing to say. Do you really think anyone will accept such a messy proposal? How could you think of remarrying and having me take care of you when you thought you'd confined to a wheelchair? Of course it's impossible. You don't have anyone to rely on anymore. Wouldn't life with a cane be easier than life in a wheelchair?
No. What you're saying is too much.
He's a man who has always done nothing, so he takes it for granted that someone will do something for him. But absolutely not. I don't want to remarry because you're a pain in the butt. I want to be free, okay? When I said no to his proposal, it was as if I was giving back his words at the time of divorce, when I asked if he was serious. To me, your proposal now is more like, are you serious? You are so brazen and shameless. I replied with a smile.
Think again. You abandon me like this?
My husband keeps ranting. Abandonment is not a very nice thing to say. In such a state, a wife would. No, I'm a stranger now, so you can't rely on me. It was you who gave up on me in the first place. The accident, your condition, it's all your fault. You can live the rest of your life with your dirty hair and shabby clothes and not bathe at all. I had said all the things I wanted to say, things I never said in the divorce. I was right. You're going to regret this, see? My husband seems to realize that there was nothing he could do about it, and he was completely done. At the time of the divorce, I thought, he's a man who has taken it for granted to work hard for many years. So even if living alone seems easy now, the day will come when he will get hurt. I never thought it would turn out this way.
Enough! I will give up on you and have Regina take care of me.
I don't think that's possible.
What?
Regina already lives with me. I mean, she hates you. Her husband hates you. And you think you can count on her now? My husband stood there stunned at my words. I think he really wanted to rely on our daughter. I wonder if the bike ride had messed with his head too. Well, I guess there's really no one else to turn to. But why don't you just ask for home care? By the way, there are 3 reasons why my husband's only daughter hates him. The first is that he was too much of a domineering husband. Not only me, but he even tried to make my daughter buy alcohol for him while we were eating. I'm not your slave! She hated him. Secondly, he often introduced his subordinates to my daughter, hoping that he could get one of his own men to marry her. Of course I stopped him, but he often brought his subordinate to our house for dinner, saying that he did not intend to introduce them. And my daughter could not stand the atmosphere of what seems to be a blind date and became angry. Third, when my daughter got married, my husband heard that one of her husband's siblings had a limb.
You want my daughter to take care of him?
He vehemently opposed their marriage. Regina's husband declared that he had no such plans and would not let her do that. But my husband did not believe him. He originally wanted to marry his daughter off to a good man. I understand his concern for his daughter, but it would have been better if he had only opposed the marriage out of concern for his daughter. But instead, he spoke out of turn, questioning her brother-in-law's morals without even knowing him well enough. If I were to reproduce those words here, I would be flamed at once. I could understand my husband's feelings, but there was no way he could convey his true feelings to my daughter after he had spoken out in such a foul manner, saying that it was a result of his excessive concern for her in his own way. My daughter got married as if they were eloping. I was the only one who did not oppose the marriage, so we kept in touch afterwards. But as I said before, my husband has been estranged. There was absolutely no room for him to live with his daughter and her husband in that house. In the end, their married life is going well, and she is living comfortably as a full-time housewife. I can say that their marriage was a good decision. In fact, I feel sorry for my daughter because I'm now the one who depends on her now, that I'm divorced and don't have anywhere else to go. But my daughter Regina says, I really like your beef stew, so please make it again when you get well. I was glad to hear her say that. When I told him about our situation, he said,
Then what should I do?
You're not a baby. You can figure it out on your own, right?
Well, no.
I have my daughter waiting in the car. Take care. I said that and left. I'm a woman walking with a cane, and he's a man in a wheelchair. He could have caught up with me if he tried, but he didn't. He was just stunned. I remember he just looked down. After that day, my husband contacted me again, asked me to meet him again because he hadn't given me the things that I had left behind. But since my husband was empty-handed that day, I assumed that he was just bluffing, so I didn't accept his invitation. He seems to have lost his mind and asked for a helper. But just like his attitude toward me, he'd say, Do this, do that. The helper seems to have lost her temper and abused him with all kinds of foul language. Of course, the helper was punished and stopped coming to my husband's home. But my husband seems to be traumatized by the incident. He is now a bit suspicious of people. It seems that the usually strong-minded people are weak once they were bullied. The current helper seems to be kind, but my husband is still scared and wants me to come back. I don't want to play into his hand. On the other hand, my legs are much better, and I can go for a walk easily, though not as smoothly as I could before the injury. I go for a walk with my daughter and grandchildren when it's a sunny day, because I hear that if I don't walk, the condition of my leg will get worse. Sometimes, my daughter Regina drives us to a nearby field, where there is a little slope, and we often have a picnic together. I had planned to leave this house when I could walk, but Regina told me that the children are attached to me, and if I did not mind, I could stay here with them. So I decided to stay. Unlike my husband, her husband takes care of himself and helps my daughter with the housework. She is a really good girl and takes the initiative in supporting me. I am happy to have such a wonderful family after my divorce from my husband. Thank you, dear. Suck it up.